My friends, I love it when numbers line up together. You're here with Gord, your hurtin' hippie, on episode number 111. You can call it We Do Weekend, you can call it Hippie News Network, whatever. I play with those things, but I have now done 111 episodes of news to you guys and a little bit of opinion. So let's start with first doing a cheers. Pura Vida pen, Pura Vida bottom, everything's right. Any of you owning these, think about this once in a while. Take the top off and just clean that bottom piece. It gets sticky, and so it sticks to the connection below and can cause you difficulties. That's just a hint from me to you. Now let's have a little token. Let's get started with the news of the last 2 weeks. Cheers. And it doesn't, this happens sometimes with these, is they won't light up. Let me use this one. I can fix that. Cheers. And there we go. What is the stories I bring you today? What are the stories? Oh, that was poor grammar. My grammar would be rolling over right now. Let's start with probably my favorite kind of thing, proof of the medicinal properties, proof that this prohibition for the last 80 years has probably killed and or hurt an awful lot of children. Because this story is cannabis oil cures, not helps, cures an 8-month-old infant. This is a wonderful, wonderful story. I'm reading a piece of it here. There is a video on there. The video is a YouTube video that says the doctor confirms cannabis oil cures tumor and brain cancer. I really want you to click on that when you click on this page, because it's really worth it. And the read is really worth it, because they really get into how stigma be damned. But let me read this. The child's father pushed for non-traditional treatment utilizing cannabis and put cannabinoid oil, cannabidiol oil probably, on the baby's pacifier twice per day, gradually increasing the dose. Within 2 months, there was a dramatic reduction. Dr. Courtney pointed out that the success of the cannabis approach means that, and I'm quoting, this child is not going to have the long-term side effects that would come from a very high dose of chemotherapy or radiation. It's an absolutely beautiful story. It will not play itself out perfectly in every child, but it is proof, beyond proof, that this works on the brain so beautifully. There is a graphic that's also in the, there's a graphic on the page that is also in the video. But it starts with the size of the tumor in August 2011 when the baby first had the MRI done. 2 months later, it's almost a tenth of the size. At least a quarter of the size. 4 months later, by the picture I'm looking at, I as a layman cannot even see cancer in that, and 8 months later, it's a clean brain. This is a baby that was 8 months old, and at 16 months old, safe and going to live a full life because of cannabis. So don't tell me it's not medicine. Of course, most of you watching know that already, but share this story. Share this story with those people who don't believe. I've had the absolute tear-inducing pleasure of meeting some of these children that cannabis has saved their lives. Children who, if born 20 years ago, I would not have been able to meet them, because they would not have lived as long as they have. And they have full lives ahead of them. This is a wonderful, wonderful medicine. and we will move on from that story. The next story is, I should quieten this down when I'm online. The next one is rolling out weed comes with a high price tag for Canada. I share this story because there was another story I was going to share, but it seemed to have some kind of, it was a bad page, and I don't share bad pages with you, even though it was a good story. There is an awful lot of anti-pot propaganda coming around. This is one of them. The one that I was going to share was something from Idaho about them talking about pot-laced candies. They're going to be given out on Halloween. Please, people, don't fall for all this propaganda. It's like, you know, that fish when it's lying on the side of the shore trying and can't breathe and is flopping around. It flops the most nearest when it finally gives up and passes. That's what's happening to our pharmaceutical industries and our alcohol industries. All those industries that thrived because its main competition was illegal are very scared. This is one of those stories. This is from Bloomberg Politics. And it goes and tells you its very first statement. A statement. They don't know this, but they state it. Enforcing Canada's new legalized marijuana comes with a high price tag. The federal government will spend 546 million Canadian over the next 5 years to implement its new cannabis laws, according to the latest budget forecast. If you're going to talk about expenditure, especially in expenditure in a new and blossoming industry, you should be talking about the revenues generated by that industry and then compare. Is the expenditure higher than the revenues that are going to come from it? And no, 546 million over the next 5 years. They estimate that by 2021, less than 5 years, a couple of $1 billion will have been spent in Canada on recreational marijuana, and most people feel that that is a way underestimate because most people that will try it will never admit it in a poll. So this is what I want to warn you guys about. If it doesn't sound right, it isn't right. You know, like Candy's late, I don't have that story. I'll put this story below. But I'll put this below. But the other story was that people are going to lace their candies with marijuana and hand them out to kids. Now you got to ask yourself: do you know any stoners? Have you ever met somebody that thinks, hey, it would be cool to get kids high? And even if you did, even if one of you are saying, I know somebody like that, if they really wanted to get kids high, wouldn't they want to see them later and see what the results of what they've done? Given it's the same thing as fentanyl-laced candies and apples with razor blades. There's never been a story of it. There's never been a truth to it. It's just propaganda. Please, my friends, stay away from propaganda. But it's hard to determine the difference. If it doesn't seem right, it probably isn't. Next story from Reason.com is Gallup finds record support for legalization. Now, there were stories all over the place for this. Everybody, Leafly, Marijuana Times, Reason.com, and many others, the Huffington Post, all carried this, a recent Gallup poll, and a very large Gallup poll. Cheers. And now I'm reading. The latest Gallup poll finds record public support for legalizing marijuana, including a majority of the Republicans for the first time in half a century since the organization has been asking the question. They've been asking this for 50 years. According to the poll, which was conducted October 5 to 11, October 5 to October 11, 64% of American adults, 51% are Republicans, think the use of marijuana should be made legal. That was the statement. The use of marijuana should be made legal. And that's very succinct, very simple. And 64% of Americans are saying that. We're almost there. So this goes to show, some of you keep sharing stuff and keep sharing it. I may not always share it back, but keep sharing it. Are sharing things about Jeff Sessions says this and Trump says that. And although, yes, the Schedule 1-ness in the U.S. is important, and does trump state rights, states have their rights, and their rights to make something that's illegal federally legal locally, and they've done it. 26 out of 50, 27 out of 50 states already have done it, are along that path. This snowball is too big, and the American public supports the movement of the snowball, that it doesn't matter how populist. Look at the Republican leadership right now. Even with a majority, the Republicans are fighting amongst themselves because some of them don't like Trump, even though most of the Americans, a fair amount, over half, wanted him to move forward with his agenda, and he's trying to move forward with it. But he can't even get popular stuff passed because some Republicans say, oh, not exactly what I wanted. So there's no way they're going to stomp on 26 states and say, oh, by the way, your local laws about cannabis, fuck that, it's over. It ain't going to happen. It just ain't. I barely ever say things are written in the stone, but there's no stake in the sand. This is written in the stone. Let's move on to the next story, but it's a good one, and it's below, and it shows how the rise, there was a big rise in the late 70s to legalize, and then it kind of dropped a bit, and people didn't talk about it for a while, and then it started up again in 2002, moving to 34%, and here we are now, double that. It's amazing. It's amazing. Next story. Oh, I do have it. It's from Leaf Leaf. Warning of marijuana Halloween candy derided as a scare tactic. New Jersey is warning parents to look out for people slipping their kids marijuana-laced candy while trick-or-treating. But with no apparent evidence that has ever happened, advocates for legalizing the drug say it's nothing more than a scare tactic. And I'm quoting now. Cannabis consumers are not looking to dose children with cannabis. That is not something that I've ever heard of anybody ever being interested in doing or wanting to do, or would think is ethical, said Evan Neeson, executive director of the New Jersey chapter of NORML, which is pushing to legalize marijuana. This is just something that some police officers sometimes say every year. Never really comes to fruition, and it's just a scare tactic. People, be aware. Of course, check your kids' candy. I always did. And if it isn't a pre-wrapped candy, it's in the garbage. It's just safety first, you know? Safety first. Next story is a pretty good one. Which universities in Canada consume the most cannabis? It's kind of neat. There was a story, Canada's Maclean magazine asked the question of how prevalent cannabis use is in their annual survey of universities, and nearly 2/3 or 63% of the more than 22,000 college students who responded to the survey have never consumed cannabis. 63%. That means 37% have. That's way higher than the estimates that when they go when they legalize in Canada next year, that 7 to 10% of Canadians will try it or continue to use it. And they're trying to report here nearly 2/3 have never tried it. That means 1/3 have. That's a big number. It's a big number. I mean, when I was going to college, I would easily say it was only around 5 or 10% then, and I was going in the 80s. It's a good breakdown that tells which universities have the highest use, which have the lowest use overall, daily, few times a week, all that kind of stuff. It's a neat breakdown. I share it below. We are moving on, and we're moving on to our last story. I do have a really busy day today. I've got to get a costume off to my son. It's his 9th birthday tomorrow on the 30th. Yes, he was born just before Halloween. It's a busy time of the year. But you guys are important to me. So last story. Depressed patients who are treated with antidepressants do worse in the long run. Now this story, I shared it even though it has nothing to do with cannabis yet. This is a story just basically breaking down how dangerous long-term use of pharmaceuticals for depression can be to a person, to their family, to their environment, to their body. It's a really good story from medicalexpress.com. It talks about major depressive disorder and the effects of many of these drugs on the system. The reason I shared it in Google, and I was really, really surprised at the people who responded. There were actually 2 respondents who said they really like their pharmaceuticals. It makes them happy. But they were early in their depression. And I do remember when I first went on antidepressants, yes, it changed my mood. But then very quickly, it made me kind of an automaton. I had no emotion. I couldn't express emotion. I lost my wife because of it. So we are all very personal beings, and drugs affect all of us differently. Antidepressants, some of them may work, some of them may hurt you. All of them are going to hurt you. They hurt your liver, they hurt your kidney. They play havoc on your internal organs. But sometimes if your depression is so bad, I get it. I did it. I wish I hadn't. But I'm not saying to any of you what you should or should not do. That is a truly personal decision. Don't 100% buy what your doctor says. Talk to your doctor. If you don't 100% agree with them, talk to a few other doctors, but talk to your parents, talk to your siblings, talk to your children. Make it a decision that you all go forward together on. And then if you're going to go with pharmaceuticals, make sure you have partners, friends that will live through it with you regardless of the outcome and warn you if things are getting bad early on. But really, what I found most interesting in sharing this was when I shared my story and how I got off of that and slowly onto THC and then found CBD, cannabidiol, as an antidepressant, and how beautiful it worked. And I had a couple that had zero idea and are now researching it. So that's why I share these stories, so that you will take that story and you will share it. And somebody's going to look and go, that makes sense to me. I want to research further. I will never say cannabidiol is right for you. In fact, it's not perfect for me. Depression is a hard animal, and it's been following me lately with no reason behind it. I have a good life right now, and something's eating at me. That's depression. But I could get rid of that eating at me through pharmaceuticals. Totally get rid of it. But then I'm this automaton that doesn't smile, doesn't cry, doesn't have emotional responses to things, and I eat my body away. I would rather deal with a little bit of sadness and once in a while making it better with the use of my cannabis than to feel the way I used to feel. That's my personal story. I've shared it before. I'll share it again, and I'll put this story below. We are at the end of Weedy Weekend, or Hippie News Network. I keep putting it up as Hippie News Network because they do tend to monetize it. You might see it demonetized below. I mark that the moment they demonetize it, and it seems to tag them to say, oh, I better look at this. So, and then they usually take it off lately. There's very few of mine. My temple balls got age restricted, and my last review of Kandahar got demonetized. But other than that, lately they get demonetized, gets reviewed, goes back. So that's an update to everything. It is Sunday. It is almost Halloween. Keep your kids safe. Make it happy for them. Have a fun time and scare the hell out of a few people too. Peace and cheers, friends. Love and harmony.